Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to my studio. In this lesson, I'm going to be painting these beautiful sunflowers using the catalyst wedge tool, a palette knife, and a kitchen spatula. So, we'll probably use a few other things too, but I want to teach you how to loosen up your paintings using some new tools. If you haven't tried them before, then this is the video for you. Stick around and let's just paint. Okay, so I've got out this Michael's plastic palette tray thing, and I'll put a link for it in the description. It's really handy when you're doing these larger spatula paintings because you need to be able to, scoop the paint off the edge. And I realized quickly that if I used my Masterston Stay Wet palette or anything that has a straight edge on it, it gets kind of tricky getting the paint off and onto your canvas. So one of the things you learn when you're painting larger is you kind of have to adapt to a little bit of a different setup. So just a little bit more space is all you need. You could use one of those throwaway palettes I've got. Sometimes I use those tearaway palettes, and they have a lot more room on them. So to start off, I'm going to do kind of a different wash, and I've got out my little spray bottle, so occasionally I'm going to be spritzing that up a little. I'm going to start off with a wash of dioxazine of purple violet. It's a really kind of rich color. It's almost like it's transparent, but it's dark. So, and it blends well with yellow. So I'm going to look at these centers, and I want to sort of block in where everything's going to go, just to make sure I have space for it all before I start getting carried away with the color. So I've took this photo from these flowers here, so I might move this one down a little. Excuse me. It's that time of year again. We're starting to get the allergies. So this part of the game, you're just kind of trying to get a feel for the space and everything. And this is just an old paintbrush I'm using here. It's you can buy these anywhere. This is a 1.5 inch brush. It's a brush I've had for a while because I brought it from Canada when I moved here. So here I've got, so far, this is going to be the main flower, so it can be bigger than the other ones. And I thought I'd add that little slice of a flower there just to help with the composition. Now I'm going to add a little bit of that, burnt sienna just to kind of block in some more. And I'm just using water, just to block in. So I'm going to just look at my reference here, and then I'm going to continue just to put in some of the space more. So I'm just kind of blocking in where everything's fitting. So I'm just going to. And then I also want to, while I'm at it, I'm going to put in a few colors just for fun in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and just put in some dark washes and some light washes. And You may not keep them, but if you kind of put them in there in the beginning, then later on they can be really kind of, really fun to see kind of coming through your painting. You could take a bit of red. Doesn't really matter because you can paint over it. Just got a little bit of that quinacridone red there. And I'm just kind of working that around, and you could even, if you want, you can add some kind of browns like this burnt sienna, or you can go for a little more dioxazine violet. I just kind of switch it up here and there. That way, part of painting loose is like later on you're going to have some pretty nice abstract flowers, so you kind of want the background to have some surprises too. All right, and then kind of get that in there, and then you can start to lay in some colors. So I have a few different tools. The one I found I like the most, and of course Michael's is clearing these out, but they are on Amazon, so I'll put a link for those for you on Amazon. So I'm going to start off by grabbing a little bit of that paint, and I'm going to work some of that darker center in there just to have an idea of where the petals are going to work from. You kind of have to know where your starting point is to bring out those petals. I've taught at the Scottsdale Art School long enough to know that sometimes people, and I did it myself when I didn't really understand how to paint sunflowers, you can kind of get it backwards and start working on the petals first, and then you're really in big trouble because if you don't know what direction they're going, they can all start lining up the wrong way. So you kind of want to get those centers in first, and then you can sort of build it. So now I've blocked in that. I'm going to get a little bit, I can get a little bit of yellow, and I'm going to mix it right into that puddle of dioxazine violet, because you'll see how pretty, when you mix a little dioxazine violet with some of this cad yellow medium, it makes a really perfect kind of warm yellow. It makes almost like a prettier, more lively yellow ochre. So you can start with that. I'm going to add a little bit of the quinacridone red to it, just to kind of warm it up. And I'm going to try not to forget to show you all the different tools. Once I start painting, sometimes I go on autopilot and I kind of forget to work through all the tools. But we'll start with the big tools first, and then we can kind of move to the smaller tools to make some of the details. So you can see I'm putting my brush down, my spatula, whatever you want to call it, down, and then I'm going with the flow of the direction of the sunflower. And see how pretty these little marks that get accidentally, they kind of happy accidents that happen when you start putting that paint down, and that drifted over that purple and left a nice mark there. So I can use the edges, say I want to start making some marks for those foreshortened petals there. I can kind of put in some of those like that, and then I'll go back to working it this way and that way. And I will tell you, I'm I'm really new at using these myself. So this is kind of the year I decided to really loosen up my painting. So I started to look into, how to make kind of more looser marks and what kind of tools to use. And so between, different size brushes and then these things, I've always looked at these. I even own this one for a while. I used it for putting gesso on my canvases, and I never really used it to paint. So I'll show you what I'm doing if you can't see. You get quite a bit of paint on there, but you can kind of you'll get the hang of it. You kind of put it down and then you can scoop it. However you want to load your spatula. So I'm going to put a little more of that. I'm looking at this warm orange color. So this is just some cad yellow medium and some burnt sienna. And I'm using some of these, Utrecht paints. And so this burnt sienna is made by the Utrecht artist colors. So they're not as expensive. So you want to kind of, because you use a lot more paint. So I figured I'm going to find also, as I learned kind of how much paint you use, especially in the beginning. When I started, I was really loading up this thing, and it was a lot. So I thought, oh, I better go find a cheaper paint supply. So there's this little flower here. I'm just gonna kind of loosely pop that color in there. And we'll talk more about the colors I use for the sunflowers that are more, how do you kind of gray down? Well, they kind of get more on the green side, so you can definitely add a little. I've got out some of the sap green, so you can add a little bit of that to your mix. And go back to this flower because it's kind of in the background. I'm going to add a little bit of that, more of that kind of greeny, it's like a cad yellow, deep kind of color. And just sort of loosely put that in there. And I might add a little bit to this one back here. So people will either think I'm crazy for doing this, or that I just, I'm brave or stupid. That's the old saying, you're brave or stupid, but call me crazy, but I really enjoy, for one, putting this, and I hope you try this, because even if you try it once, putting paint on this easy, it just feels like almost like you're cheating, because like I'm making a brush stroke, and I'm making a bold brush stroke that I may never even be able to create using, a regular paintbrush. And I find that after, almost 20 years of painting, I feel like that's a win. So now I've got the next layer down. Sometimes, and I forgot to mention this, these canvases can be pretty dry and suck in a lot of moisture out of your paint. So I get these this was from Michael's too, and I just sometimes I'll give it a little mist to keep the paint really, flowing, because I like to paint what they call wet on wet, and that's just a fancy way of saying I like to paint it all in one go, so that it's, because I just like to, once I start, I don't like to stop. So yeah, so anyhow, that's a trick. Just add a little bit of that. So the next thing we're gonna do is I want to show you the other tools too, so that we don't, so that we get to see, okay, let's see how a kitchen spatula works. Now, You're gonna get tighter marks because it's smaller, but I bought this in a set this set came as a set from Target. So let's give it a try. So if you want to get a little more specific, with some of these brush strokes, you could use, say you're not ready for the complete loose challenge yet, you could use something like this. I'm not as used to using these, but you can see you can make really pretty brush strokes with that. Especially for the smaller details, you can go in there and really, you're still making loose marks. But funnily enough, I feel like I almost have a little more control with the catalyst wedge. So I'm going to stick with that because I almost think this gets a little too tight. So the catalyst also they make these brushes with the same flexible wedge. So let's try one of those out. So I'm going to mix a little bit of this transparent yellow oxide with the cad medium, and I'll put a few brush strokes in with that. And that this little tip, you could use it to put your brush down and then pull into the flower to get a really, whoops, I grabbed some cad light there by accident. So yeah, we can really have fun with this. And okay, now I've got a lot of light and dark with the yellows, but I haven't really done much for the center, and that'll change the values again of the center. So I'm gonna go ahead and just give my paint a spritz here, and I'll get a little bit, just wipe this off. I'll get a little bit of, I've got out some burnt umber. We can put some of that in. And I like to leave some of this underpaint because it just looks so pretty, the different colors and the layers. And I like to loosen up you can make some little, kind of loosen the edges a little. Drag some of that down. Get a little bit more on my brush, and same thing. I'm going to just kind of loosen those edges, just kind of put some of that down and then kind of move it around. I'm just trying to get, you just got to kind of push and pull with the values so you get some light values in there, and then, pop some of the darker values in, and it sort of builds as you go. And use the sides to kind of push some of that through. Okay, so now you see we got something happening here. So the next thing I like to do, I get it to this stage, and you could almost leave it the way it is and just enjoy it, but I'm gonna get a little bit of the greens in there. Squirt my paint a bit again. And so I might just switch to this one. This is another one of these spatula tools, or I think maybe I'll just try putting them in with this again. I feel like it keeps me the loosest when I use the biggest tool. So I'll get some of this sap green, just kind of pile that in there. And I always start with the dark and kind of build up to the light. And so I'll put in those sort of sunflowery, you know, those little petals that you see behind them. You don't see them so in store-bought, but I've painted so many sunflowers, I just kind of put them in there. Imaginary. And then you could put some of these stems, so that this is sort of going off to the side, and I'll use this kind of the square edge of the brush and put some of those marks for the stems, and put a leaf or two kind of coming off there. Near the bottom, it's a little tricky to get. So while I think about it, I don't push my Patreon channel that much, but if you want to learn more, and I have loads of lessons on Patreon, and it starts at $5 a month and goes to $29 a month for the full-length lessons. So don't forget to check my Patreon channel out there. And don't forget to just like and subscribe or share it with a friend if you enjoy my little videos. I just sort of really got back into this year, and I decided I want to do something different than kind of the same old, same old. You know, I want to move forward in my own painting, and I think loose painting is sort of what I've always wanted to do. So I'm kind of learning with you guys, because this is all new. Using these things is new for me. So I thought, why not just learn together? Okay, so I like those marks, you know, they're nice and abstract, and that's what we're aiming for. So, and we got the beautiful purple shining through. And so now what we can do is add, while that's wet, you know, again, I could give it just a really light mist. And that's why I used to think these were a gimmick at the art store, but they do spray the water a little less powerfully. So there's a couple green mixes you can do. Sap with some, you know, some of this cad yellow medium. I'll lighten it up. But if you really want to get another green that works well, get some of this Viridian, which, you know, some people really don't like Viridian, but if you add it with the right colors, you can make some really pretty colors. So I'm getting Viridian with this cad yellow light. And if you ever get a green like this and it's just too much, just get a little bit of this burnt sienna in there, and that'll really tone out the green a bit. Just keep adding slowly. Don't add a lot at a time, because then you go right back to, you know, too muddy. So, but I kind of like that green. And I'll put a few of those, you know, a few of those marks here and there to lighten up some of the dark green there. And it's okay to go back with your brush later and touch things up that you want to, like you can touch up those leaves that if you don't get them quite right with the spatula. Just imagining a little green behind these petals here that are kind of foreshortened. Don't worry if you get something like that, because you can come over that and make a nice bold brush stroke over that. So you can adding a little white to it also really kind of dulls it down. So you can add a little. Okay, well, that's a lot of fun. So I like that so far. And just wipe your spatula off. I have a little bucket of water next to me I can kind of clean it off with. And then now I'm going to go back and work on the highlights here. So I'll put a little more, I'm going to put a little more cadmium yellow medium out and kind of reset my palette. Okay, I took just a minute here to reset the palette so you didn't have to watch all that. And now we can go in and work on the background and the highlights. So I'm going to get some of this cad yellow light, mix it with some cad yellow medium. So I'm not going for the brightest bright right away. And you can warm it up a little with some of that quinacridone red. I really like that. You know, start off with a nice warm bright color, and let's try that. So going around and looking. Oh, and I don't want to forget that I'm going to also show you some palette knife work. I don't want to skip that. And so just looking at some of the brighter marks there. And I'm loading up this little thing each time. Putting a few, oh, I got some green on there, so that's not so great. Go back and kind of blend that. Okay, so I've done some of that with this, and I'm also going to show you before I get carried away, because you don't want to get carried away on the highlights, because then it becomes all one highlight. The difference in value is what makes it really pop. So now I'm going to just show you with some palette knifing. Same thing, I'm going to get a little bit of that. So you can see I'm just sort of mixing those two colors a bit. And I'm going to look at my reference and just sort of, now I have to get used to using the palette knife. So yeah, I'm going to just sort of put a few of those brighter marks in there. And then I'm going to go back and use some warmer colors to blend it, but use a little, mix a little burnt sienna back in there, and I'm going to go and kind of blend that a little. Kind of. Same with here, make a few more solid, darker strokes so your whole painting has the same sort of texture. Get more of that warm, you know, that burnt sienna in there, so you get some real nice warm, thicker strokes too. Can't see them as much on the video because they're blending with the underpaint, but it's just to give it some more texture. So it's and I really like that little bit of purple, so I'm just going to leave that there. And I'm just shaping some of these petals here. Well, you can definitely see that one's kind of flailing around back there. And then I'm going to add a little more thickness to this one. Now you can see some of that warm underpaint is blending really nice there. So you can see that I had that. So I'm using palette knife now, and it gives another kind of mark. It's still really loose, but you can get a little more accurate with that. And I'm no palette knife master, so maybe by the end of the year we'll all be masters at it. So I'm gonna also, even though the reference just shows the flower all kind of going perfectly around, I'm gonna put a few little, you know, sometimes they have a little petal or two coming in, just so it's a little looser. And then you can go in with some black and really darken some of the spots, not the whole thing, but some of the centers of the sunflower can really deepen even more. And draw your eye in there with a little even more dark of a value in there. And I didn't put it in till, I mean, acrylic dries really quickly, so you don't have to worry too bad. But if you're, you know, using oil, I wait to like almost the end of what I'm doing with these flowers before I would add the black. You can see that adds a lot of depth to that flower, and I'm not losing it all. I'll go back and use some, you can use some of that burnt sienna again, so you don't go totally to, you know, to it all being one value. I just kind of want to darken that, especially up there. And sometimes I'll even put a little bit of a petal coming over the center to loosen it up a little. So you can go like that. And if you want to shape it, use a little black on your palette knife, and you can kind of give it a little swing there. Okay, so now I want to switch to something that's gonna bring those flowers, the background and everything to life. So I'm gonna mix up a little bit of color for the background. So I'm just gonna reset my palette one more time. Okay, so I cleaned my palette off again because I just didn't want it getting too mucky. And I put out some of this. This is this brand Liquitex Basics, and $5.99 at Michael's. You can play around with some inexpensive acrylic colors that work really good for these larger paintings. Used to think I had to spend a lot on those kind of things, but now I've realized that for something like this, especially you're practicing, but I've even seen professionals using them. So I thought, wait a minute, I don't have to spend hundreds of dollars to learn this. I can try it out and kind of do. Same with the canvas. These are those 5-pack from Michael's. You get 5 for $12.99. It's kind of crazy. So I'm just mixing up some of that purple. It's called purple, grayish purple or something like that. And I'm mixing in some white. And then I'll take some of this blue and I'll mix in a little white with that. And you're getting a bit of that purple, so they're not going to just totally collide on the canvas. And you can try something like that. You could leave it, just the way it is. But I'm going to just play around with putting a few marks on there. And I'm leaving some of the background here and there just because it just kind of, I like the way it looks, some of that red and purple showing up through there kind of adds to the whole loose effect. And I didn't bother with painting the glass vase in this one because, it's kind of, just didn't feel like it, And you can get in there now if you want. You can get in there with, I don't even need to, but you could switch to, if you feel like it. I have this, I just bought this one on clearance at Michael's, this tiny one. I could, scoot in a bit of that color. But if you don't have one of these, there's nothing wrong with switching to a smaller brush if you want to, and popping in a few little marks here and there to really, continue the painting. So if you feel like, oh, that's too much, I'm going to mess up the whole painting, no pressure. There's no rules to do this. We're just going to try to make a loose painting, so you don't have to worry what brush you use. Just whatever works, I'm just using this little brush just to kind of, don't want to lose these little bits of red, so I'm kind of combining some of them, and you kind of take some away and keep, get rid of some. I mean, and keep some. And once you get to that stage, you can go and get some different colors and pop in a little blue and a few different marks here that you can do with your brush, or you could go back to your spatula brush and put in a few. I like to kind of mix up the values a little. And then another thing we can do is go back and add a few bright highlights to the green. And I'll mix up, got a little bit of this really pretty kind of light green, and that also just came from this Liquitex. So I'll put some of that. I'll try to put some of the links in the description. And this gives you an opportunity to you can also remove some of the underpaint if there's too much, of that showing. You can go over top of your background a bit, put in some new greens that kind of combine the background with the flowers. And so, okay, and then another thing I like to do is I have a little ultramarine blue out on my palette, and kind of make a darker bluey purple. And just to show the center, I'll put a little dab there. And you can also take some of that bluey purple and put a few. You can add it to wherever you feel you want to put it in. And you can always go back and add a few highlights, like maybe right here we'll put a little overlap onto that green there, because it started to look more like it was behind the green. So same with here. And just sort of have fun with the whole process, I'll make sure I go around and look at where I might have come back on underneath the green. So you kind of want to make sure that you've got your yellows. But other than that, because it's a demo, it's not gonna, I'm kind of talking and painting and trying to, get this thing out there so you can learn. But I think it went pretty good. I didn't know how it would turn out, but yeah, I really enjoyed painting this, and I hope that you give it a try. And make sure to share it with a friend, or hit the like and subscribe and all that stuff, so that you get notified when I go live and everything. And I'll just look forward to teaching you more of these videos, because I really enjoy them. Well, hello again, everyone. I just wanted to say goodbye, and Rosie says goodbye for the day, and she's cheering you on to paint these beautiful abstract sunflowers. I hope you give it a try, and look forward to seeing you in the next video.